For years now, video games have been more than just a pastime for fighters. They've been an outlet. Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest to ever compete in MMA, has long credited gaming for keeping his mind sharp and helping him decompress in between the chaos of training. Max Holloway has done the same, building a loyal fan base not just through his fights, but also through his online streams. And now, it looks like Paddy Pimblett has raised the stakes entirely by making the leap from gamer to gaming star. The baddie, who has never been shy about his love of Football Manager, revealed through Instagram that he's set to star in the upcoming Battlefield 6 live-action trailer. The teaser showed him holding a skinned weapon, hyping the full trailer's release with the line, "See why they call me the baddie." For fans who know Paddy's charisma and larger-than-life personality, it almost feels inevitable that he'd cross over into something as global as Battlefield, but the announcement still sent shockwaves across both MMA and gaming circles. This isn't without precedent. Conor McGregor made headlines in 2016 when he appeared as Bradley Fillion in Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, giving the UFC one of its first big crossovers into a major gaming franchise. That move gave fans a glimpse at how combat sports stars could fit into gaming culture, and now Paddy is carrying the torch in his own way, with the bonus that his quirky personality feels tailor-made for the energy of a blockbuster shooter. The fan response was immediate and massive. Comments poured in across social media, excitement from Battlefield veterans, disbelief from MMA loyalists, and memes from everyone in between. Some fans were hyped beyond words, saying it's been years since they've been this eager for a new release. Others cracked jokes with lines like "Scousers don't get headshot," riffing on Paddy's now famous "Scousers don't get knocked out" catchphrase. Some renamed the whole game Battlefield, while another cleverly quipped, "We got Paddy in Battlefield before GTA 6. What's striking about this move is how it shows the widening overlap between gaming culture and MMA. Fighters are no longer just athletes, they're personalities whose reach extends far beyond the octagon. For Pimblett, this could be just the start of a parallel career in entertainment, much like how McGregor leveraged his Call of Duty role to expand his brand. And for gaming companies, the appeal is obvious. UFC fighters bring a built-in global audience that's young, engaged, and already primed for digital crossovers. So the real question becomes, is this the start of a bigger trend? If Paddy Pimblett can headline a Battlefield trailer, and Conor McGregor already blazed the trail with Call of Duty, it's easy to imagine a future where other fighters, from Israel Adesanya with his anime flair to Sean O'Malley with his gamer style and streaming presence, become faces of entire gaming franchises. Israel Adesanya has always thrived in moments when people counted him out, but the reality of his current situation is hard to ignore. The former two-time UFC middleweight champion, once viewed as one of the most dominant and creative strikers in MMA history, is in the midst of a career slump. After climbing to the top of the sport with highlight reel knockouts and a flamboyant style that earned him the nickname "The Last Stylebender," he now finds himself on the wrong end of a 3-fight losing streak, and the whispers about whether his reign of greatness is over have grown louder with each setback. One of those losses was the night Sean Strickland shocked the world. Coming in as a huge underdog, Strickland didn't just beat Adesanya, he pressured him, dropped him early, and made him look hesitant throughout the fight. That performance earned Strickland the middleweight title and completely flipped the division upside down. From the moment the judges' scorecards were read, the conversation about a rematch became inevitable. Fans wanted to know, was it a fluke? Could Adesanya come back and reclaim his throne if given a second chance? For a while, Adesanya seemed interested in finding out. He openly floated the idea of running it back, and the storyline almost wrote itself. However, as time passed, it became clear that Strickland wasn't exactly rushing to sign on the dotted line. Whether it was because of financial security, other opportunities, or simply a lack of interest, Strickland hasn't shown much urgency in answering Adesanya's call. That silence has forced Izzy to take a step back and reconsider his path. Speaking with Submission Radio, he laid it out plainly. "I mean, I'm not surprised. If you want to get something done right, do it right the first time. That's the lesson I learned." He's doing other things in his own life. He's made the money he wanted to make. I don't want to be waiting around. It's a telling admission, and it signals a shift in mentality. Instead of lingering on the Strickland loss and chasing revenge, Adesanya is choosing to let go of the narrative and focus on staying active. "I've moved on. I just want to fight. I'm staying ready for any and everyone," he said. That approach feels like a return to the hungry contender who stormed into the UFC years ago, fighting often and dazzling fans with his confidence and creativity. At this stage, the priority for Adesanya isn't who's standing across the octagon. It's about re-establishing himself, reminding the MMA world that his striking brilliance and championship mentality haven't gone anywhere. And yet, there's an undeniable sense of urgency surrounding this chapter of his career. A fourth consecutive defeat would be devastating for his standing, both in terms of rankings and perception. Fighters like Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, and even George St. Pierre at different points in their careers all faced stretches of doubt, and the way they responded defined their legacies. Adesanya may now be entering that same crossroads moment, where resilience and reinvention are just as important as physical skills. The Strickland rematch may still happen someday, but for now, Adesanya isn't letting her career stall while waiting for one name. He wants to fight, he wants to win, and above all, he wants to prove that even in the face of setbacks, the last stylebender still has chapters left to write. Kai Asakura's UFC run has been nothing short of turbulent so far, and now the former two-time Reason Bantamweight champion is ready to hit the reset button. After a tough introduction to life in the octagon, where he was thrust into the fire immediately at flyweight, Asakura has announced that he'll be leaving 125 pounds behind and returning to more familiar ground at 135. The Japanese standout revealed on his YouTube channel that the move isn't about pressure from anyone else, but rather about following his own instincts, insisting he'll rebuild properly, get his body in the right shape, and come back sharper, hungrier, and more dangerous. For a fighter who made his name with explosive knockouts and aggressive scrambles, bantamweight does feel like a more natural fit, especially given his history of success in the division overseas. Of course, in the world of MMA, any move like this draws commentary, and former UFC flyweight contender Muhammad Mokaev couldn't resist getting a shot in. Taking to X, Mokaev wrote bluntly, "This is what happens when you get fast-tracked. 0-2 in flyweight." The jab hits on the reality that Asakura's UFC start has been rough, debuting straight into a title fight against Alexandre Pantoja at UFC 310, where he was submitted in the second round, before being finished again by Tim Elliott at UFC 319 just months later. It's a harsh critique, but also one that reflects the unique circumstances of his UFC entry. Very few fighters get a title shot on arrival, and while it was a big opportunity, it also meant no warm-up period to adjust to the elite level of competition in the UFC's flyweight ranks. Still, the decision to move back up to bantamweight feels like a calculated course correction rather than a retreat. At 135, Asakura has history on his side. It's where he rose to prominence in Reason, winning tournaments, collecting belts, and building a reputation as one of Japan's most exciting exports. The cut down to 125 had always been grueling, and the move back could allow him to carry more power, preserve his durability, and fight closer to his natural frame. Fighters often rediscover themselves when they make these adjustments, and Asakura clearly believes he can do the same. The old saying, "third time's the charm," might be the mantra here. After 2 submission losses and a rocky start, Asakura is searching for that breakthrough UFC win that can steady the ship and silence doubters like Mokaev. If he can recapture the form that made him such a feared finisher in Japan, the bantamweight division could see him carve out a second life in the UFC. And for a fighter who insists he's guided by instinct and hunger rather than external noise, this next chapter could be the one that finally allows Kai Asakura to plant his flag firmly on UFC soil. Fight week drama has become an unfortunate theme for UFC Perth, but few could have predicted the chaos surrounding the Tafa brothers. The card was once stacked with 15 bouts, showcasing local favorites and rising international talent, but by weigh-in day, fans had seen the lineup shrink to just 12 fights, and the latest cancellation hit especially hard. The heavyweight showdown between Justin Tafa and UFC debutant Louie Sutherland was called off at the 11th hour. Officially, the reason given was an illness suffered by the Australian fan favorite. But soon after the news broke, Sutherland went public with a very different version of events. On Instagram, the Scottish heavyweight explained his understanding of the situation. Justin Tafa hadn't been struck down by illness, but had instead been hospitalized during a brutal weight cut. Even more surprising, according to Sutherland, Tafa was still 7 to 8 pounds away from the heavyweight limit of 266 when he was pulled from the fight. For context, heavyweights rarely have to undergo drastic cuts compared to lighter divisions, given the wide weight allowance at the top. To be nearly 10 pounds over and then struggle so badly in an attempt to shed it left fans absolutely stunned. For many, this wasn't just a late-notice hiccup, but a professional lapse. Sutherland expressed his disappointment with grace, saying, "I'm absolutely gutted and was so ready to put on a show. The fight game is full of ups and downs, but on to the next one, hopefully not too long to wait." Still, it's clear he felt short-changed after flying across the world for his long-awaited UFC debut, only to be left without an opponent. MMA fans, however, didn't hold back. Social media lit up with frustration, with many calling for Tafa's release from the roster altogether. Comments like, "HW should be cut immediately for not making weight," and "How do you miss weight by 8 pounds as a heavyweight?" echoed across platforms, while others pointed out this wasn't Tafa's first weight-related issue. The general consensus? Heavyweights shouldn't be missing weight, and certainly not by such a margin. The bigger picture made the situation even more frustrating for the Australian crowd. UFC Perth was originally set to be a family showcase, with both Justin and Junior Tafa scheduled to compete. Junior had been booked to co-headline against Ibo Aslan, a matchup that promised fireworks given their combined knockout records. But earlier in the week, Junior also withdrew, leaving fans without either of the Tafa brothers in action by the time the card kicked off. What started as a celebratory homecoming for the Tafas has turned into a nightmare, with both brothers scratched from the lineup and questions swirling around Justin's professionalism. Instead of a show-stealing brawl, Perth fans are left with disappointment, and Justin Tafa may now be left fighting for more than just wins, but for his place in the UFC altogether.
Alexander Volkanovski has never been one to throw around empty praise, and when he puts his stamp of approval on a fighter, it carries weight. The former UFC featherweight champion knows firsthand what it's like to test himself against Islam Makhachev. He spent 2 fights in the octagon with the Dagestani lightweight king, pushing him further than anyone else had before. That's why his belief in Della Maddalena ahead of the welterweight champ's defense later this year isn't just blind patriotism, it's rooted in experience and careful observation. Speaking on Submission Radio, Volkanovski laid out why he thinks JDM has a legitimate path to victory. For starters, the Australian emphasized Della Maddalena's recent win over Belal Muhammad, a grinder known for his suffocating wrestling and top control. To Volk, that performance wasn't just proof of JDM's composure against grapplers, it was the turning point that elevated his confidence in takedown defense and his ability to shut down the style most believe Islam will bring to the cage. Look how he handled that. He's a beast on the feet, and I guarantee his confidence in grappling and takedown defense has gone to a whole other level, Volkanovski explained. The endorsement didn't stop there. Volkanovski praised JDM's boxing, forward pressure, and knack for overwhelming opponents in striking exchanges. Those qualities, he argued, could be the exact tools needed to not just edge Makhachev on the scorecards, but to actually finish him. JDM's boxing and pressure that he can do, incredible. He can definitely get a finish, he said, before adding that Islam remains a nightmare matchup for nearly everyone else in the division. Perhaps most intriguing is Volkanovski's plan to potentially link up with Della Maddalena in camp. Given Volk's inside knowledge of Makhachev's tendencies and strengths, training together could provide JDM with insights that very few fighters have access to. That kind of preparation, mixed with Della Maddalena's striking prowess and proven durability, sets the stage for one of the year's most compelling champion versus champion clashes. Makhachev, of course, isn't taking the challenge lightly. He knows a second belt would place him in the company of all-time greats, but he also knows that moving up a division means facing bigger men with bigger power, and JDM's clinical boxing combinations might be the sharpest at 170 pounds right now. For Volkanovski, the equation is simple. Islam remains elite, but JDM has the style, the form, and the momentum to shock the world. Whether he can do it or not, the stage is set for one of the biggest fights in recent UFC history.
Merab Dvalishvili is doing everything in his power to make sure Cory Sandhagen finds out exactly what happens when you step into the cage with a man who lives to grind people down. The bantamweight champion is locked in for UFC 320, and after another open workout at Syndicate MMA, he didn't mince words. Sandhagen has to understand that Dvalishvili hits harder than most expect, and if Sandhagen can't shut down the takedowns, the machine will welcome the chance to finish the job standing. It's not trash talk for talk's sake. It's the sort of blunt, practical assessment you get from a fighter whose identity has always been rooted in pressure, pace, and wrestling. Sandhagen arrives as a clear threat, tricky, creative, and lethal on the feet. The kind of fighter who's finished elite opponents with spectacular strikes and who can change the course of a fight in a heartbeat. Merab acknowledged that, pointing to Sandhagen highlights: the flying knee on Frankie Edgar, the spinning kick that floored Marlon Moraes, the submission win over Mario Bautista, and made it plain that he's preparing for all of it. But he also made the simple championship math crystal clear. If Sandhagen's takedown defense is good enough to keep this a striking match, Merab will adapt. If it isn't, the fight will likely end with Merab imposing his will, wearing Sandhagen down, and finding a finish however it presents itself. The intrigue here isn't just stylistic, it's strategic. Sandhagen's craft and unpredictability force opponents to respect angles, feints, and counters in ways many wrestle-heavy challengers don't usually have to. Dvalishvili's team, though, isn't trying to remold him into something he isn't. They're layering on tools, sharpening entries and answers so that the champion can do what he's always done, but with more ways to end the night. That blend, relentless grappling as the base, improved finishing instincts as the multiplier, is what makes Merab especially dangerous. He doesn't need to abandon the game that made him a champ to become more lethal. He just needs to add the edges that allow him to capitalize when fighters try to stand with him. For fight fans, the matchup promises a classic contrast: Sandhagen's creativity and dynamic striking against Dvalishvili's suffocating pressure and cardio. For the fighters, it's a measuring stick. A Sandhagen win would prove that his toolkit can neutralize the most relentless wrestler in the division. A Dvalishvili win, especially a finish, would confirm that his evolution into a more well-rounded menace is real, and that knockouts and submissions are now realistic outcomes rather than hopes. Either way, when the cage door shuts at UFC 320, the math's simple, even if the path isn't. Sandhagen must stop the takedowns to keep this in his realm. If he can't, Merab believes the rest will take care of itself.